Mr. Gibbs,
Here.
Mr. Raybould,
Here.
Mr. Stevenson,
Here.
Mr. Van Stone,
Here.
and Chair Cole-Hansen.
Here.
Okay, Madam Chair, in addition, it looks like you have Brian Olmstead and Pat McMahon also on the Zoom call.
Excellent. Good to see that. Okay,
Good
so the
morning.
second item on the agenda is the Idaho Department's Water Resource Budget Update.
Yes, I'll be giving just a brief update on the current status of the IDWR budget. There's both good news and perhaps a little more challenging news in the budget update. First, the legislature's Joint Finance Appropriation Committee has passed the department's maintenance budget, Senate Bill 1363, and that does include all of the water project funds. It includes the $30 million annually for the water management account, includes the $5 million annually that goes to the secondary aquifer fund for aquifer recharge operations, and includes the $1 million to the water management account for flood management projects. All of those have been included in the maintenance budget, and that is headed to the Senate floor. As far as the department's operating budget, as you know, the governor instituted a 3% holdback earlier this fiscal year, last fall. The legislature, or the JFAC at least, has made that permanent and then added an additional 1% for the current fiscal year. And that is included in Senate Bill 1333. It's called the Idaho Rescission Act of the fiscal year 26. The department is going to meet that budget reduction in several ways. First, it is scrutinizing all travel, and that includes the board's travel. As you know, the water board canceled its travel meeting to McCall and rescheduled that for a meeting here in Boise. We've actually stopped all staff training with very limited exceptions. And for the current year, there will be no vehicle replacements. So that can be done for 1-2 years, but after that, that starts to stack up. For fiscal year 27, what JFAC, the Joint Finance Appropriations Committee, has done is added another 1% in reductions. So that would be a 5% reduction from where we started for the current fiscal year. And so the department is planning to do all of those things again, curtail non-essential travel, curtail staff training and development, and vehicle replacements. But in addition to that, there will be a couple other actions. 2 positions will be shifted from general fund to dedicated adjudication funds. One in the North Idaho adjudications, one in the Bear River adjudication. That's definitely a very temporary solution because those are the fees that people pay for when they file their adjudication claims. There's not enough in those funds to carry those folks for very long. So a couple of years. And then the department's going to start prioritizing stream gauging and figure out which of those might be able to be reduced. So certainly we're going to prioritize stream gauges that are necessary for river and reservoir operations, water right administration and such. But if there's any that we can do without, we're going to start looking at that. So, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions that committee members or water board members may have about the department's budget update.
Committee members, are there any questions about the department's budget update? Any other board members? Okay, I guess it is what it is.
Yep, we'll work through it.
All right. So then the next item leads us to the water management account spending plan.
Yes, Cynthia will give an update on that item, Madam Chair.
Cynthia.
All right. Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm going to take a moment just to share a document here for us to view. Let's see here. Okay. All right. It looks like you can see that. So I'm just going to give you an update today on the water management account and some of the spending plan and funding obligations that you all have made. This one, what you're seeing here on the screen is current as of the obligations and resolutions that you passed at your January board meeting. I also just want to touch briefly on the ARPA funding obligations that you've made in the past couple of years. So just as a scheduling note, and some of you may be aware of this, but at the storage committee meeting that was held last week, the committee members and other board members recommended that we go ahead and schedule a follow-up finance committee meeting for the afternoon of the 26th. So that will be immediately after your work session. So we have a couple of other topics that we'd like to address there. One of those has to do with the Anderson Ranch dam raise, some information that we received at that storage committee, but we probably have a couple of other topics and other projects, proposals that are coming before the committee. So for today, no action is required, but you will hear a few funding proposals in the subsequent agenda items. And then again, in your next finance committee meeting. But we did think it would be helpful to at least walk through the current spending plan as a refresher, as you're thinking about some of these funding obligations and reflecting on the comments that Brian just made about the current status of the department's budget. So I guess I'll just highlight here on the screen that you're seeing. Again, this is the spending plan that is current as of January 23rd. We did go ahead and update the interest that has been earned since that time. So that is current as of the end of January. So you'll see that of all of the appropriations that have been applied to this, to the water management account, that totals over $405 million. Let's see, moving down to, and I think you all are getting familiar with some of the groupings of these obligations. You'll see that this first table highlights the statewide regional water sustainability projects. And again, some of these will look familiar to you by now. This includes the amount that has been budgeted by the board, as well as the second row adjacent to that shows the obligated funds and funds that were obligated through board resolution as of January. We're currently updating the funds expended, and we'll have that a current version either as of January or February before your March meeting. I do want to draw attention to the Anderson Ranch dam raise that you currently have obligated $10 million from the water management account for that project. You also have funding obligated through ARPA, and that will be a topic for the next finance committee meeting. As at the storage committee meeting last week, the board learned that the estimated project costs have increased according to reclamation. Another, I guess I will also draw your attention in this list to the Raft River Pipeline project. I think that is an agenda topic on the meeting today. So you can just note that the board has obligated $7 million towards that project, again, as a regional water sustainability project. And the other, again, projects have had these funding allocations for some time. And as I mentioned, we'll go ahead and update the funds expended for your next meeting. The next table highlights the Regional Water Sustainability Program that the board developed specifically to target the ESPA and some of the activities that are ongoing there. Again, the purpose of that Regional Sustainability Program is to support aquifer stabilization efforts in the ESPA and the 2024 mitigation settlement between the Surface Water Coalition and groundwater users. So in this table, you'll see a list of a variety of programs, grant programs, and specific projects the board has obligated funds for. These also include, I think, with ESPA recharge specifically, some ARPA funding has been dedicated to support development of recharge infrastructure. And this table also includes the $30 million that was earmarked in FY26 to the Water Board. So in total, the Water Board, from all of the appropriations in this account, has obligated over $99 million towards ESPA specific projects. The next table highlights the aging infrastructure grants and the various I guess, rounds of that grant program. The board has been, if you recall, the previous appropriations specified that $70 million should be dedicated to aging infrastructure grants. And the board last year decided to obligate some additional funds for this program. And so you'll notice that that in FY 2027, for this upcoming year in August, we do plan to issue another round of aging infrastructure grants, applications, or consider new applications. And at this stage, and I should back up a little bit, this table has been reconciled a bit since you've last looked at it. Staff has taken the time to go through all of the contracts that have come out of the awards that were approved by the board. And so what you see here is an updated amount based on what was actually contracted for those projects. So as a result of that, you had that freed up some additional funds. Some of those projects came in under what the original award was for. And so we've gone ahead and applied the remaining funds, or carried over those funds into what could be set aside for that FY 2027 round. And that's something that the Finance Committee can certainly consider going forward. But at this stage, you have over $24 million set aside for that next scheduled round. Excuse me. The next table shows the various rounds of statewide flood management grants. And again, those have also been reconciled to reflect what was actually contracted. That is a very specific appropriation that's been set aside for that grant program. To date, those appropriations total $7.4 million. And what you see here in this last row is approximately $280,000 that has been that carried forward from the previous appropriations. And you may see an additional appropriation depending on how this year plays out with the legislature. And then we have, the board has actually awarded or approved 4 loans to be funded from the water management account. And you can see those here. Some of those were recently approved. You'll also notice that the Raft River Recharge Group loan was approved. And again, we'll be discussing that in more detail today. The one loan that I want to draw your attention to is the Lost Valley Reservoir Company loan. That was approved with some conditions at the last board meeting in January. The loan was for approximately $13.2 million, and the board in its resolution indicated that that could be funded by either water management account funds or revolving development account funds, but with a preference for using water management funds. So what you see here is the full amount applied and obligated from the water management account. But as we look at the total amount obligated, you'll see that that does actually push you over the total amount that you have appropriated for this fund. So that may be, that's an opportunity for the board to reallocate some of those funds or assign them to the regional, or excuse me, the RDA, if you have a need to allocate additional funds for upcoming projects. So that could be a topic of discussion at our next Finance Committee meeting. And then finally here, Madam Chair, you'll see that the Water Quality Collection Program, that also received funding appropriations to the water management account back in FY 2020 through 2022. Those funds have been fully expended, something we could probably take off this list for future discussions, but just want to make you aware that that was money that was applied to the water management account that has been utilized. So in summary, as far as obligations, the board has obligated slightly more than, budgeted slightly more than you have in the fund to date. And so as you make decisions going forward or want to discuss that further, we can certainly discuss how to balance that out, and we'll anticipate that discussion at the next Finance Committee meeting if you'd like. But with that, I'd stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Are there any questions regarding our financial situation for the Finance Committee today from existing Finance Committee members?
Madam Chair, this is Dale.
Yes, Dale.
Cynthia, on the Priest Lake management account, that 5,400,000 some thousand, is that for the construction of the dam that was completed?
Madam Chair and Board Member Van Stone, that's an excellent question. You'll see that we had the board obligated funds for the water for the construction project and associated litigation, and both of those have actually been closed out. So those are completed. The water management or the water management project, which included the thoroughfare and dam construction, has been completed, and that could be removed from this table as well.
Madam Chair, Cynthia, so you have about $500,000 left over that wasn't expended on the project?
So, excuse me, Board Member Van Stone. Yes, we can. We'll need to reconcile that and update that funds expended column there to reflect the total amount. There may be some funds that are freed up from that project that can be used elsewhere.
Okay, well, thank you.
Excellent question, Board Member Van Stone. Any other board members have questions regarding our budget, our financial picture? Not seeing any. Okay, well, thank you, Cynthia. That's
right.
been very helpful as we
Thank
go
you.
in and looking at these projects. Next item on the agenda is the Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company Regional Water Sustainability Project proposal.
Yes, are you gonna lead off, Neely?
Yeah, I'll introduce the group. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Recently, you have received a proposal from Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company, a Regional Water Sustainability Project proposal. And we have representatives here today to make a presentation on this project. And I would just remind you that at the end of this agenda item, you'll be asked to make a recommendation to the board regarding whether to add this project to the list or not, or provide funding. And with that, I would hand it off to the group to make a presentation. And we've got Hattie here in the room, Hattie Zoban.
Madam Chair, Neely, Molly Gould will be presenting on the Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company. She's project manager for Ardura, and Matthew Stewart, who's the general manager for Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company, and they are virtual. And then I can also support questions on that project.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I just wanted to confirm that my share is coming through and you can all see my screen okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Molly.
Thank you. As mentioned, my name is Molly Gould. I am with Ardura, representing Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company for the water efficiency and recharge projects as they were submitted to the Regional Water Sustainability to be added to the priority list. Also with us today is Matt Stewart. He's the manager of the Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company.
Thank you, Molly. Let you take it away. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So today I'll be going through the background, a little bit of our project sponsor, project description, cost estimate, funding review, project schedule, and then specific assistance requested. So Aberdeen Springfield currently diverts approximately 325,000 acre feet annually from the Snake River. Only about a third of that is able to be delivered due to inefficiencies within the canal system. In order to make those deliveries, there's also a significant amount of groundwater and storage water that's needed to supplement that surface water. These affect not only the users of the Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company, but also all users within the Snake River Plain Aquifer. These water efficiency and recharge projects are needed to reduce incidental seepage loss, increased managed aquifer recharge, and do a better job of managing deliveries to its shareholders. A little bit about the Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company. It was established in 1895 under the terms of the Carey Act. The canal construction began in 1901 and was completed in 1910. Most of those canal profiles are still the ones laid out from 1910. They currently have over 450 shareholders, and shareholder assessments are the primary revenue driver for the canal company. They also sell storage water when it's available to be sold. Part of this project would be to free up some of that storage water for other users within the system. Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company operates 190 miles of main canals and laterals. In 2001, they began incorporating SCADA into their system, and they are continuing to incorporate more and more as funds and availability allow. There are 3 existing recharge ponds within their system, the largest of which is the Hilton site recharged, and that recharged at a rate of up to 225 CFS in 2024. They have 2 permits that are currently being submitted to the Department of Water Resources for injection wells. These will provide up to 60 CFS of recharge capacity when the water is available for recharge. As mentioned before, they're only able to deliver about 115,000 acre feet of water of that 325,000 that are diverted from the Snake River. That is supplemented with almost 3,000 acre feet of storage water, 3,000 acre feet of groundwater, and 134,000 of storage water. There is great potential in this area for groundwater conversions. A lot of the users around this area have water rights that are both surface water rights through the canal company and groundwater rights. Most of those users that have the dual rights are using groundwater rights right now because of the difficulties Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company has delivering their full water shares. As Aberdeen is doing efficiency projects, they are able to bring on more of these users and have them convert to surface water and not be pumping groundwater anymore. They just completed a project through NRCS funding, and that has enabled to bring on more users. They would like to continue that trend. The projects we'll be presenting today show opportunities for how they can do that. So in our application, we identified 8 key projects that Aberdeen Springfield could add to this list, and we've prioritized 2 of those projects for your consideration today. One of them is Lateral S Improvement Project, and the second is a canal lining through their main canal. We've split that into 2 phases, one the BLM canal lining, and the second being the private land canal lining, and that's due to federal land requirements and the NEPA requirements while crossing over federal grounds. This first project, Lateral S, may look familiar to some of you. It's presented as part of the Aging Infrastructure Grant Program. This canal runs through 93% sandy soil. It has extremely high seepage rates, very minimal slope, high erosion rates, which lead to sediment loss. Due to all of those constraints, they need to push extra water along with the deliveries just in order to get any water to the end of the line to make any deliveries, which results in 10 to 20% spill at the end. If that's not done, the water doesn't make it all the way to the end. So not only are they losing a lot of seep in this section. They're having to lose additional seep in order to make those deliveries. So what we have proposed is a piping project. This will pipe a section of the Highline Canal into the split with a Highline Canal and lateral S. It'll be 2.6 miles of HDPE pipe, and will replace 17 of the current head gates with SCADA gates. We anticipate a reduction in water loss through this project of 2,455 acre feet. As I mentioned before, this project was submitted for the Aging Infrastructure Grant. As a side note, it was ranked number 1 out of the 45 projects for the Aging Infrastructure Grants consideration. Due to this year's change in the parameters of the Aging Infrastructure Grant, the amount of funding was awarded as $670,000 rather than the full amount of $2 million. Previous years, there was not a differentiation between seepage loss, efficiency improvements, and what exactly could be paid for through the Aging Infrastructure Grant. So out of the top 20, we were one of 2 that was not provided the full amount, and that is due to that seepage amount that would be addressed in this project. We also applied for the NRCS grant for this project. We should find out the end of March whether or not that will be awarded. It would be for $1.8 million. So if that is awarded along with the generous amount given from the Aging Infrastructure Grant, we're sitting at about 2.5 million funded for this project, leaving a funding gap of about 3.5 million. When you look at the water savings over 20 years, similar to how they do for the recharge projects, that comes out to $120 per acre foot of recharge as a cost of this project, just to give you a parameter that I think you're all pretty familiar with seeing. This is our anticipated project schedule. 8 months of this will go into the planning, design, and permitting. 9 months of it would be into bidding, construction, and closeout, for a total project duration of 17 months. Our second project, as I mentioned, is phased into 2 different projects here, and that's because of that federal land component. The total project would be 7.7 miles of channel being lined with an HDPE canal lining. That's split into the purple section being the BLM canal lining and the blue section being the section through private land. We anticipate this project being over 36,000 acre feet of loss per year. That is a huge amount. This is based on 2 different studies. One was a master's thesis that was conducted in this area in 2018, and then also looking back at USGS reports in this area. The split between the 2 different phases of this project, the BLM section being 2.9 miles would cost about 2.9 million. The private section of the canal is 4.8 miles, and we anticipate that at 5.9 million. It's higher in that section, even though it's outside of BLM ground, because of the number of delivery gates, the concrete structures needed, the diversions in this area. That's what drives up that cost, despite the BLM ground being more permit heavy and a little bit more constraints outside of the budget here. This brings the budget up to a total of 8.9 million for this project. However, when you can factor in the massive amount of water savings, we're looking at a little over $12 per acre foot of water savings over a 20-year period. That's not quite cloud seeding numbers, but it's pretty good as far as water savings numbers go. For project number 2, we anticipate this being a 15-month project. 12 of that would be the planning, design, and permitting. The reason that is so long, again, is that federal land. And we believe we can get this project done in 3 months. I think you've seen how fast the canal linings can go based on the Twin Falls Canal Company project and how well that one is going. Some of the other projects that we included in our original memo but haven't fleshed out in as much detail today are low-line canal lining, the Pleasant Valley Desert Drain spill reduction, The Hilton Recharge Reservoir and BLM facilities, again, those are currently being used for recharge. There's just additional efficiencies that could be done there. Lateral D piping, lining replacement. They currently have some older linings that were not HDPE and are starting to show their wear already. Automated head gates is kind of a constantly occurring, not quite a maintenance item, but something they're constantly looking at bringing up to date to improve efficiencies. The overall goal of all of these projects is to increase efficiency while decreasing supplemental groundwater usage and reducing the need to use storage water, keeping that storage water in the reservoirs and being able to do more efficient managed recharge rather than constant throughout the season incidental recharge. The main driver for that being just in those hot season months when everybody needs that water, that's not when we want to be doing recharge. We need to be doing recharge in a managed, efficient way. So as mentioned, there's a lot of the inefficiencies within this program, and these projects will increase not only the system efficiency, but the water supply and water quality as well. Reduce sedimentation, as mentioned, specifically through that sand section there. The soil erosion is a consideration, as well as the water and energy efficiencies that are addressed through the project. And our overall goal throughout all of these projects is aquifer recharge and drought resiliency. The more water we can keep in our reservoirs and in our aquifer is the goal. Believe that several of Aberdeen Springfield's infrastructure has the capability to be a 1-2 punch on knocking out a lot of these efficiencies while also giving us the tools that we need to be able to efficiently conduct managed recharge in a way that's going to have the most amount of impact per dollar spent. So to summarize our assistance requested, Project 1, which is the lateral S improvement that was seen through the AIG, the Aging Infrastructure Grant, we're requesting $3.5 million to finish funding that project. For Project 2, the Aberdeen Springfield Canal lining, that's the one that has the $12 per acre foot cost of water savings. And that's an $8.9 million project, but it is broken out into 2 different phases. In addition to the funding requested, we want to take this time to thank the Water Resource Board for all you do and ask for your continued support in helping to support managed aquifer recharge, continue to refine and support the UIC program, and continue to prioritize recharge couples efficiency projects. Madam Chair, did you have any questions for me on this presentation?
I don't right off the bat, but I'm sure we have board members who do. But before we get started, I want to make a note for the record that board member Barker joined us prior to your presentation.
Great.
In the event that he has any questions as well. So Finance Committee members, do you have any questions for Molly or Matt Stewart?
Madam Chair, this is Jeff. I got a few questions. I think Molly indicated that there was 2,702 acre feet of groundwater diverted within their system. Is it the goal of the canal company to put all of the lands on surface water and eliminate diversions of that 2,702 acre feet?
I believe the number, yeah, I think you're right. I'm trying to flip back to screens here, but we would like to reduce as much of that groundwater pumping that's done by the canal company as possible. Most of the groundwater pumping that's done through the canal company is done to supplement the laterals as they're getting close to the end in order to prevent that massive amount of push and then seepage loss that's done along the canal system. So we would like to reduce the amount of groundwater pumped by the canal company, but broader than that, we also want to pull in as many groundwater users as possible onto the Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company system. I do not have exact numbers of how many people are interested around there, but I can tell you that there's about 8,000 shares that are not used because of inability to deliver those shares. Does that
Okay.
answer your question?
Well, that 8,000 shares would comprise more than this 2,702 acre feet that you
Yes,
targeted early.
yes, sir. That's in addition to that.
Okay. So by my math, looks to me like about 38,821 acre feet of efficiency, which would be a loss of incidental recharge per year. Have you done any correlating math? If you did put all the conversions in place that you are considering, how many acre feet of pumping would that reduce overall? Do you have any idea on that?
I could get back to you with that, but I do not have that number in front of me, and I don't think we've calculated it to well, Hattie's got her hand raised, so she might have a better answer than me. I would feel uncomfortable giving you a number without looking into that more. Go ahead, Hattie.
Madam Chair, Board Member Raybould, the purpose of these projects are to maintain the water balance as well as improve water delivery and water management. The math on the reduction in incidental recharge is that we would not only convert groundwater acres, but also provide recharge coupled projects within the facility scaled to the size of those reductions. Molly presented the project as a two-part project with federal land and private land. And so those can be implemented over time in order to make sure that the appropriate recharge facilities and groundwater reductions are matched. But the main point I wanted to show the board and the finance committee is that Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company is diverting 325,000 acre feet for 65,000 acres. That's a huge amount of water that is taken out of the system, natural flow and storage water. And so although incidental recharge is reduced on paper, they're committed to maintaining that water balance by implementing recharge projects that are coupled with these efficiency projects and partnering with water users across the state to reuse and lease that water as necessary to support continued operations, farming operations, and sustainable farming in southern Idaho. So just as we know that when the systems were implemented in the 1900s, there was no spill at Milner, and now we have spill because of efficiency projects over time. When we change and improve efficiencies, we free up water for other users as well. So it's not, in my mind, we're not hurting that water balance as they are committed to implementing projects to offset it. And they're looking at about a 16% reduction in their total water use, which is not extremely huge for this size of a project, how much water they're diverting each year. Chairman Raybould, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just as I stand before legislators, they've asked me on more than one occasion, what are you guys doing? You're paying for efficiency projects on one hand and then paying for recharge projects. And this is primarily on the ESPA where the legislators are concerned. You're paying to reduce incidental recharge and then paying to do managed recharge. And I think under the right scenario of having recharge assets come online to offset potential efficiency projects, that's doable. But I think we would need to have some very good data to show the legislature that overall this is a way of being more efficient with the water. In years of plenty, we recharge a lot of water. In years of scarcity, we don't recharge as much. But there would have to be some kind of an analysis that would indicate that overall there isn't a deficit to the aquifer by funding these aggressive efficiency projects.
Madam Chair, may I follow up to that question?
Yes.
Madam Chair, Chairman Raybould, I think that is exactly what Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company is committed to. One important point on this proposal is this is prior to design, and the reason why Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company has approached the Idaho Water Resources Board is to address these questions head on. And I just want to remind the Finance Committee that Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company uses almost 134,000 acre feet of storage that they don't need to on a yearly basis, and that would go a long way to address problems directly in the water balance of the southern Idaho region, and that they do have the capacity in their system to deliver recharge water as well as the irrigation water to the farmers. So ultimately, the goal is to manage this water more efficiently and provide wet water when needed to farmers during the peak of the irrigation season in July and August. And right now, they're not able to do that because of the way their system has been operated historically. Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other questions from Finance Committee members? Any other board members have questions?
Madam Chair, this is Brian. Got a
Yes, go ahead,
question for
Brian.
Hattie. Hattie, so the problem I have with lining more canals particularly on the Blackfoot to Milner Reach is that you know, the net change to the storage water might not be very much, but the change comes in, you know, all that incidental recharge is lost on Aberdeen Springfield, probably mostly in season into that Blackfoot to Milner Reach, and it's probably a pretty large portion of the natural flow that Twin Falls Canal then diverts in the late summer. And so if another 100,000 acre feet is carried over in the reservoir system, that's great for Aberdeen Springfield and maybe even for the reservoir system. But for instance, last year, Twin Falls Canal had full storage in, you know, they only get about a fourth of their water from storage, the rest natural flow. So Twin Falls had full storage last season or close to it, but they still had a 73,000 acre foot projected injury. I don't remember exactly what it came out in the final. So the loser is going to be Twin Falls Canal. Now, if these liner projects were coupled directly with a groundwater to surface water conversion, because that same, you know, the groundwater use in Aberdeen Springfield shows up in that same reach. So, but I don't see anything that really ties the two together. This is just, you know, it's going to save a lot of storage water for Aberdeen, but there's no guarantee that it's going to do anything to improve reach gains in Blackfoot to Milner. In fact, I'd say it's guaranteed to reduce reach gains in Blackfoot to Milner, and that's going to produce more injury to Twin Falls and possibly Northside, and it's also going to require, and that's going to in turn require more mitigation from IGWA in the Upper Valley. So I just, you know, I really struggle with state paying for any more canal linings on the ESPA if we're not addressing the problem with the agreement and the depletions and mitigation.
Madam Chair, Board Member Olmstead, I think that is exactly what the problem is that we typically don't talk about the offset and incidental recharge when we look at these lining projects, and we know that happens in every lining project. I think the important component in this proposal to be on the regional water sustainability list is that Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company not only is committed, but is planning on implementing those recharge coupled projects as well as providing the groundwater. We have to tailor each funding application to the requirements of the grants, and we did identify groundwater acres during the planning process for prioritizing these projects. And this is the preliminary design. So if the Idaho Water Resources Board wants to direct Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company as part of their funding support to identify those acres and provide them with concrete conversions of those groundwater acres, I think that's totally appropriate. I think what's really important about Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company compared with other canal companies within the state of Idaho is that they are at that key reach and they recognize their importance to the overall agreements. But is it Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company's responsibility to deliver water to Twin Falls Canal Company, or is it the coalition of groundwater users and surface water users that all need to work together to ensure that Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company can continue to serve their patrons and also work with these other entities, because right now they're really hamstrung by the way their operations work. So the goal is to continue partnerships and developing partnerships with all of the stakeholders and not to take water from stakeholders. And I think that Aberdeen has demonstrated that through this process and will continue to work with the board to maintain water balances as indicated.
Yes, and I would like to chime in on this. I think that it is the Aberdeen Springfield's full right to become more efficient. I think the question in hand is the use of state dollars. And should we, as we have to look at the entire Eastern Snake Plain and the mitigation plan, the whole imbalance of the aquifer as a whole, not just one individual canal company versus another. This is a critical reach for us. And I think I agree with Board Member Olmstead that the conversions have to be part of the mix in order to make this work for the state side.
Madam Chair, I do want to let you know we have identified those acres. And so for this presentation, we didn't have that information ready for you, but we do have that information and we can supplement, send it to you guys after this meeting.
Okay, and is there any other board member comments?
Madam Chair, this is Jeff. Just listening to the discussion, I'm wondering if maybe the way to manage this and make the water board accountable to the legislature, maybe the first thing that ought to be done is the recharge capacity build out and get the recharge capacity in place and be able to show that recharge is occurring, and then we've got we're on the plus side of the column, and we can start to work our way through the other side of putting the canal efficiencies in place so that we net out in a positive position at the end of the day.
Madam Chairman, this is Mark.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Gibbs, Board Member Gibbs.
You know, I obviously I agree with almost everything everybody said. We can save water, but until we figure out how to put the water back in the ground, we haven't saved anything. And we continue to put the burden on the reach gain that affects the Twin Falls Canal Company. So it's a catch-22 in my opinion, whether we keep saving water. Anyway, I guess it's a conundrum that I wish we had a better solution for. I think maybe Chairman Raybould's solution about building out recharge first is an important phase of this. But it's obviously I agree that we have a major problem.
Madam Chair, Al Barker.
Yeah.
Can I
Yes.
maybe not a question, but an observation. It seems to me that we don't know exactly what impact these two proposed projects are going to have on the Blackfoot to Milner Reach. And we've been working quite some time to come up with recharge projects in the upper basin for the very purpose of benefiting the reach gains in that reach. And it seems to me that before we do anything in regards to particularly canal lining in this area, we need to know what impact that canal lining would have on the reach gains in that area. And while Aberdeen Springfield may be committed to doing other things in the future, right now this project doesn't have any commitments to it to do anything to restore the reach gains. And so I'm not on the committee, but it seems to me like it would be very important for the board to understand what impact the projects that Aberdeen Springfield is asking us to fund, what impact those have on the reach gains.
Thank you, Mr. Barker.
I don't know if that information is available, but I think it needs to be.
Do we have any of that information available?
Madam Chair, Board Member Barker, That information is something that we can determine and provide. I think the main important part of this is that the Regional Water Sustainability List was established to help projects that are important to the state and the regional water supply develop and understand those impacts. So although the projects that were presented in this presentation were the priority projects, they have many projects that would impact the state's Regional Water Sustainability List, and they're wanting the state's support and asking for the state's support to evaluate those impacts. The difference between state and federal money is that state money doesn't require extensive feasibility studies to determine and assess those impacts as part of the environmental process. And so that could be the first step of this regional water sustainability support, is that the state helps them define how they're going to implement projects that don't negatively impact the surface water users downstream. And of all the canal companies in the state, Aberdeen Springfield is somewhat of the key to these projects because they're right at that pivotal point, and we should explore that before we make changes. And Aberdeen is not asking for these changes to be implemented in a rush. They're not saying that they're doing it without the board. They're asking for the board's support and help. I think they are excellent partners and transparent in their process. And when you look at their numbers compared with other canal companies, they're one of the biggest opportunities in the state, not only to free up wet water, but also to provide recharge facilities that benefit groundwater users as well, and spring flows. Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. From the state's perspective, we want to make sure that there is not a negative impact to the Blackfoot to Milner Reach. That's the key piece there. Do you have support from the Surface Water Coalition or IGWA for this project? Any kind of support letters, any kind of?
Madam Chair, we did solicit the Surface Water Coalition for support on some of the funding applications that were previously submitted. I believe they did not provide direct support letters, but we have been continuing to communicate with them. And their concerns are the same concerns provided by the board. And the question is, can we work together as a group of stakeholders to solve the problem so that Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company can benefit their shareholders and their neighbors by making improvements to their system?
Okay. Are we ready? How about IGWA? Have you gotten any support from IGWA?
Madam Chair, we also solicited letters with them, and I believe that doing conversions for groundwater users as recommended by Chairman Raybould is another way that we can get that support. Timelines of grants and trying to get grants turned in, sometimes we don't have those letters ready for those grant applications. And the purpose of this submittal was to continue to partner with the board to develop these projects with state and federal funding and the support of the stakeholders involved. So the Regional Water Sustainability List is not necessarily a set amount of money you're securing support, you're securing cooperation, you're securing resources, you're securing modeling information to develop these projects for the state.
That is true. But one of the contentions of the Regional Sustainability List is that it has regional support. So it'd be good to see if we could get letters of support from SWC and IGWA for this project. And I think we might be premature in voting on this yet because I for one don't know the impacts of the Neely to the Blackfoot to Milner Reach. And I think that Board Member Barker's comments were spot on there. Also, it would also be good to look at some of the projects that are further down the list, like as Board Member Raybould mentioned, the recharge project that you have further down the list that's not yet funded. If we could somehow show that there's been a process in place or something in place to mitigate the impacts to that reach, then the canal lining could follow.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the reason why this Regional Water Sustainability List submittal was made this year was because of the need for recharge projects within Aberdeen Springfield Canal System. We were encouraged to submit by the deadline, and we had about 3 days to prepare this application. And I think that the main purpose of being on the list is not to identify the single project that changes the landscape. I think Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company would like to develop a feasibility analysis to prioritize those projects and design them. They do not have full design for these projects, and there's a lot of questions. So I think there's still a request for the board to help support them in developing these projects so they can prioritize projects that benefit the public as well as Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company.
Okay. Would you like to comment?
Certainly the board will work on recharge projects with Aberdeen Springfield, through the board's recharge program. They don't need to be on the regional water sustainability list if that's their goal.
Yes, that's for sure. Okay. Is there a motion to add this project to the regional sustainability list?
Madam Chair, this is Jeff. I think we need more information. I'd also like to encourage the Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company, if they've got some ideas about recharge, the board would be anxiously engaged in partnering with them to get more recharge capacity in place. And we could start on that tomorrow, even today.
Yes. Okay. So is there a motion to table this to a later time, or do you want to bring this back to us at a later finance committee meeting?
Madam Chair, that would be preferable. I would appreciate being tabled to answer some of those specific questions that you guys presented, the board and the finance committee presented. And I think that we've highlighted the importance of Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company to the region.
Madam Chairman, this is Mark.
Yes, board member.
I'll move to table this project.
I'll
Is there a
second.
second? Okay,
I'll
it's been moved to
second.
second. It's been moved and second to table this project to a later finance committee meeting. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the information that you put together. It's substantial.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Molly. And Matt. Next item on the agenda is the Littlewood Canal Company Regional Sustainability Project Proposal.
Madam Chair, today I'll be introducing the group that will be presenting. This is a presentation from the Littlewood River Irrigation District. They recently submitted a regional water sustainability project proposal. Hattie will be kicking off the presentation here. And I would add that we do have representatives here that can answer questions. And with that, I would hand it off to Hattie.
Madam Chair, members of the Finance Committee meeting, my name is Hattie Zobat. I'm a project manager and engineer, and I'm working with the Littlewood River Irrigation District. Dave, do you want to introduce yourself?
Madam Chair, my name is David Park. I am a board member of the Littlewood River Irrigation District. I was born and raised in the valley of Littlewood River Irrigation District. This project has been in discussion ever since I was a youth. They just talked about it in 2005. It's been exciting to hear about it, but it's always been financing has always been a limiting factor in this project. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but turn my time over to Hattie for.
Thank you, Chairman Cole-Hansen, Mr. Park. So the Littlewood River Irrigation District pressurized pipeline project has been developed to the 90% design level as of 2005. The Littlewood River Irrigation District is a district north of Cary that diverts water from the Littlewood River. This system has long been identified as another opportunity area where we can deliver and manage water more sustainably. I think that one of the exciting elements about this project, as it relates to the conversation we just had, is that they've extensively studied this reach and have a clear plan of how to implement the project without diminishing groundwater returns. I think one of the things that is really challenging about efficiency projects is that based on the funding mechanism, we highlight the water savings. Now, water that's saved is still used in the West, and I think that's the question that the committee is really interested in. So late last year, they asked how they could get this project built, and we recommended pursuing the Regional Water Sustainability List because they had a well thought out plan and design, but the design is from 2005, and the environmental assessments and documents have also aged quite a bit. So those elements need to be brought up to today's standard of care. And then the environmental assessments for federal funding would need to be evaluated to support their permitting processes. And I'll be able to explain that more as we go through it. The main objectives are to continue to recharge to the ESPA. They would like to provide a reliable water source to Cary Wildlife Management Area, increase flows to the Littlewood River. I'll explain that more as we get into this presentation because that's a key part of the recharge. They also want to provide pressurized irrigation to farms within the Littlewood River Irrigation District. The energy conservation element of the entire project is very substantial. And lastly, they would like to maintain flood and reduce fire and provide fire protection. So Littlewood River Irrigation District uses Littlewood River Dam to store approximately 30,000 acre feet for irrigation in the area. The Littlewood River Irrigation District was formed in 1996 to pursue federal and state funding. The idea was that they would be better qualified as an irrigation district to secure those public funds. There's 36 miles of earthen constructed main and laterals. They are serving 12,000 acres. And I like to look at how many acre feet per acre are delivered for a project. So they are releasing about 60,000 acre feet per growing season, which is 5 acre feet per acre, but they're only able to deliver 3.5 acre feet per acre. And then the consumptive use is going to be a little bit less than 3 for that area for alfalfa. So we can see that there's quite an opportunity for water savings, a minimum of 1.5 acre feet per acre that they would either not divert or leave in the reservoir as storage. The main canals are the east and west canals, and they then deliver to the farms in that district. They also own a hydroelectric generation plant in Littlewood River Dam. In the future, they would like to update the delivery system to include automation. They would like to improve delivery during the peak growing season. So this is the period when they are fighting the wheeling losses of this dirt canal system. I think this is very similar to the other projects in the area. They would also like to maintain recharge, flood control, and wildlife support operations. The most important thing that isn't as clear when you read these older documents is that the surface flow and storage in the reservoir will result in more days of water in the reservoir and also more days of water flowing in the Littlewood River reach. And then although the Water Resources Board doesn't typically look at pressurizing irrigation system as being a benefit to the area, reducing power demands does benefit our state, and it would significantly reduce costs for the system and allow them to pay for their match. Currently, the revenue is derived from the annual assessments, power sale agreements, and interest on investments. The project as conceived in 2005 would pressurize the entire system and deliver water throughout the irrigation district through telescoping pipelines that change diameter and capacity as they move down there. The system currently diverts almost 300 CFS, and I just want to highlight that the system would only require 180 CFS of water to irrigate those 11,000 acres in the Littlewood River Irrigation District. I think that's something that is often overlooked in these efficiency projects, is that you no longer need to divert 2 times as much water to get to the farms. And that's what we're talking about, is managing the water so that when water is scarce, we have enough water to finish our crops, which reduces risks and sustains farming in the region. This schematic is from the Bureau of Reclamation's environmental assessment. And I think one thing that's very interesting about how this project was conceived is that we can see there is a red line that represents the Littlewood River. The Littlewood River is an intermittent reach with extremely high losses. And that is why canal system was developed from the get-go, because they couldn't divert water out of the river and have any water to use. So they learned if they put this efficiency project in of this canal back in the day, they would have more water for crops. The goal of this project is then to effectively pipe the east and west canals to minimize incidental recharge during those peak growing months. And that would reduce the overall diversion and then enable additional flow down the Littlewood River channel for recharge volume, And then also on the East Canal, they deliver flow to the Carey Lake wildlife area. And so that's at the end of that canal. And if they pipe it, they'll be able to provide a more reliable source of water to that area. They have approximately 35 CFS of water loss in the West Canal and almost 50 CFS of water loss on the East Canal. And so by implementing this project, they would not need to divert that lost water, and then it could be directly recharged when available. And I think the main thing based on the previous discussion related to Aberdeen is that they would not be recharging during the peak summer months, but they would still be recharging during the wetter summer months when water flows are exceeding the irrigation demand. And they would have capacity in their system to do that in parallel to their irrigation system. The 10 to 15 CFS of water delivered from Carey Lake, to Carey Lake is through the East Canal as discussed previously. And this variable amount was the part that was really interesting in the environmental assessment, because that water is actively recharged in that channel and it never reaches the Snake River. So whatever water is diverted into the Littlewood River would be recharge water, and that is measured. Additionally, they would provide for pump stations in the full design to eliminate the gravity system. And then there are floodways and additional recharge and flood control facilities conceived within this project. I thought it was interesting to show the pipe diameter and lengths. So this system telescopes from 72 inches all the way down to 3 inches, with the total amount of pipe system being about 32.3 miles. And then I wanted to note again that the capacity would be 165 CFS capacity max versus the 300 CFS that was previously diverted. The estimated, I'm going to use a different word than savings. I'm going to say the water that is freed up for better management, purposeful management, is 20,000 acre feet. And that target would be primarily during the July and August period when the water is scarce. And then they would also have a more reliable flow to Carey Lake wildlife area. Overall, the project was originally estimated to be about $25 million in 2005. When we adjust simply on the basis for inflation, the estimated project costs are anticipated to be $52 million. The part that the irrigation district is looking for support now is to bring this project to shovel ready. And although the work was done to the 90% level, because it was done in 2005, those plans are not valid for construction today, and they were issued for construction at the 90% level. And then the environmental assessments and environmental impact statements also need to be current to today's public environment. They wouldn't be considered valid. Even though that work needs to be redone, there's a lot of information within that report that can be evaluated and shortcut the timeline that it takes to do things, because we would be able to actively partner with the Water Resources Board and the communities that are impacted by this project, because it's been studied extensively and we understand how and where the best impact for the dollars spent can be had. The implementation schedule is a little bit longer. Littlewood River Irrigation District does not have a lot of cash on hand. That is why this project wasn't originally implemented in its full size. I think one of the things that is very challenging for the smaller canal companies is that these large scale projects, they cannot even match a small portion of them in order to be implementing a $25 million project when they originally put it in place. And what we've learned in working with different entities is that sometimes it's necessary to phase and scale these projects so that the portion of the project that improves their operations and sustainability is implemented and they don't get hung on the shelf for 20 years like this one has. So our goal here is not necessarily implementing the full $52 million project. That was the basis of the submittal to the Regional Water Sustainability List. It's to evaluate that whole plan with the Water Resources Board and other stakeholders so that we can understand what the important piece of that project is to implement it, that they can afford and construct. There are easements and permits that will need to be acquired. And then it's important to recognize that this is a recharge coupled project. It has been from conception with the natural channel providing recharge as well as recharge and flood facilities. Those are dual purpose, so they're not really flood facilities exclusively. They recharge during flood events to replace incidental recharge that is lost by improving efficiency of conveyance in the east and west canals. The energy efficiency is significant. The 7.9 million kilowatt hours of electricity that was estimated to be saved would reduce power expenditures by almost $1 million in that area. And if the project is scaled, that would be proportional. So if we implemented half of the project, it's potential that you could have half of that savings. I think this goes to the economics of the project for Littlewood River Irrigation District and how do they implement it and have their shareholders value the expense of the project. Excuse me, not shareholders, irrigation district members. The increased reservoir flow, the increased river flows are something that I think are especially significant. So the water available to the Littlewood River was evaluated by the Bureau of Reclamation in their 2010 environmental assessment, and they estimated that it would have increased by 15% in 2006, 13% in 2007, and 75% in 2008 if the project had been constructed. And this is the purpose of efficiency projects, is to use less water, divert less water, so there's more wet water available to users. And that includes the general public who would use the Littlewood River or the reservoir for recreation. The reservoir would also maintain water levels for a longer period of time that would have increased recreation and an opportunity for carryover flow or flow later in the season if natural flow reduces. So this goes to sustainability and reliability of this region for the next 100 years. Additionally, there's water quality improvements. Wildlife habitat support was included within the environmental assessment, as any wetlands that were impacted were directly mitigated, and the increase in flows in the Littlewood River would benefit our natural environment, and that was evaluated and measured within that planning document. Flood management benefits would be important to reduce economic impacts and decrease erosion on the river channel. So when the flooding events would occur, that water would be diverted into the flood facilities and recharge facilities to reduce the total flows within that river. The economic stability of being able to rely that your water will be there during the hotter summer months, something that's universally important to farmers, and that improves their economic futures. And then the increased river flows and storage within the reservoir benefits the public because they have access to that water that would have previously been underground and inaccessible to them. The environmental assessment has a lot of extensive planning information involved in there, and they estimated the impacts of the water, just as you guys have requested for the previous projects. And I think this is a good example of how to estimate those benefits. I just want to note that the environmental assessment was included with the submittal application and that these are excerpts from that document. So if you have specific questions, we can go and look at those pieces of that planning document. So a key item is that the remaining flow within the Littlewood River would provide recharge because the river is a known sink in the region. That is why water is diverted out of it. And that reducing the irrigation diversions does not necessarily reduce the groundwater diversions unless you expanded the Littlewood River Irrigation District, which is not in the plan. So the plan is just to provide that water down the channel for recharge, and then to deliver the irrigation water more efficiently during those hot months. I like to look at this project as a two-phase project because the cost of the project has been insurmountable for the Littlewood River Irrigation District to date. And instead of pursuing the full scale of the project, Littlewood River Irrigation District would like to phase to implement this project in cooperation with federal funding opportunities. The state funding would help them prepare for those applications by bringing the design to current standards and defining that specific phase cost and environmental impacts for those elements of the design. And then to continue to work with partners to refine the design to address the current water priorities in the state. That would be the phase one work. We estimated that as $4.75 million for bringing the Littlewood River Irrigation District project to fruition, with the goal being to secure significant state funding from NRCS, federal funding from NRCS and Bureau of Rec. Just for the Finance Committee's benefit, typically NRCS will fund up to $25 million in construction, and Bureau of Rec would typically fund up to $10 million in construction for a specific project. One funding mechanism that's well suited for this is the Water Energy Efficiency Grant, and they require a 50% match. On NRCS, they can require, that's wrong, it should be 25% match. They'll provide 75% federal funding, but that's still a significant amount of match that the Littlewood River Irrigation District would be responsible for providing in order to implement the project. So with that, I think that's the last of my slides. With that, I'd like to stand for any questions. And Dave, if you have anything to add related to the importance of this project to your community, you also have an opportunity to do that.
Well, I don't have anything else to add than what she has, other than add my knowledge that it would be a huge impact on our community. I mean, as much as the original reservoir was when it was built in the 30s and raised in the 50s, I currently live there and raise my family there, and we're dependent upon the water like a lot of people are. But I'm glad to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Okay, Finance Committee members, are there any questions for Hattie or David?
Madam Chair, this is Dean.
Yes, Dean.
Maybe I missed it. How many acres do you have in your district that you deliver water to?
12,000 approximately.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? Who's it? Brian Olmstead. Okay, this is for the other board members. Brian, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Question for David, and maybe I missed it, but are there some supplemental wells within the project, and would it be designed such that those would be replaced with the surface water?
I do know there's a couple. There's not very many, but do you know the answer to how, as far as the design, whether that includes?
Madam Chair, Board Member Olmstead, Cary Groundwater District actually was the entity that encouraged us to come to the Littlewood River Irrigation District because Cary Groundwater District would really like to see this project implemented. As far as being able to soft or hard convert groundwater acres within the area, The restriction would be based on their natural flow water rights and then their storage water. So storage water typically could be used for soft or hard conversion for the acreage that's not covered by the natural flow. But I think that, yes, those elements are conceived when these designs were prepared and the environmental documents were prepared. Groundwater conversion was not a key issue. And so I noted that the current water priorities need to be evaluated. And so they have a big head start, but now they need to tailor it to the project that can be constructed with state, federal, and their funds. And so I think that is a question that would be answered and addressed during the design process.
A follow-up, if I could, Madam Chair.
Yes, you may.
So Hattie, it looks to me like this project could be, I mean, I'm trying to look through the same lens on these, and that is that there's no net negatives to the ESPA. And I think this project could possibly meet that if you could show where the savings are and where the gains are to the aquifer. But the price tag is pretty staggering, I'd say. But other than that, it looks like a good project if it has those parameters that it will be a net gain to the ESPA. Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Jeff. Based on Brian's questioning, it looked to me like there was a design flow envisioned to service the existing lands. If you were to do conversions, is there any surplus capacity in the current design to take on those conversions, or would all of the pipe sizes and all that kind of stuff have to be increased to allow for additional capacity to cover potential conversions?
Madam Chair, Chairman Raybould, I believe that the design would need to have increased capacity in some locations in order to deliver that increased flow. I believe that would be when it is telescoped down. And so usually the smaller pipes are going to be what is restricting those available water supplies for soft and hard conversion. But I believe that could be resolved. 72-inch pipe carries a lot of water. And at the beginning of the presentation, there's a table
Right.
and 72 inches is very high capacity.
3-inch, not so much.
Yeah. 3 inches, not so much. So I don't think it would be difficult to tailor the project to those water priorities.
Okay, then I'm going to ask the question that I asked at the previous presentation. Do you have any support letters from SWC or IGWA or anyone that might be impacted?
Cherry Groundwater District.
Cherry Groundwater District.
Big Wood River Basin Groundwater Management Advisory Committee is another one.
Oh, very well. Very good.
Madam Chair, Mr. Patton, the letters were solicited and Cary Groundwater District for sure is supporting of this project. By coincidence, this project also had a short period for submittal to the Regional Water Sustainability List. We'll be happy to follow up with those letters for your benefit. And the deadline just required that they weren't submitted with the application, but we can get those letters of support.
When you refer to a deadline, which deadline are you referring to?
There was a December 1 cutoff for consideration on the Regional Water Sustainability List on a yearly basis. And so these applications were submitted by that timeline in order to meet that requirement for consideration.
Okay. Okay. Any other further questions from either
Madam
committee
Chair?
members? Yes,
Madam-
go ahead.
This is Dale. This is not a loan project, is it? Where we loan money out, it's a direct funding from the water board.
Can you ask that again, Dell? I didn't quite catch that.
Are we? This is not a loan to the
No.
request. So it's our. So what account is this coming out of? And how much money is in that account?
Well, by placing the project on the Regional Sustainability List, it doesn't guarantee funding. It prioritizes the state's resources for funding.
Okay.
And at this point in time, we'd have to probably make a decision on where the funding would come from at a later meeting.
Okay, so they just want to be put on the list as on priority right now?
That is your request, correct?
Madam Chair, as far as I know, that is the purpose of this presentation. The previous presentation was to be considered for being on the list, not necessarily a funding allocation. Madam Chair, we believe it's important to disclose what future funding requests would be involved.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Jeff. I think maybe this project isn't quite ready to make a recommendation to the board on, like the previous one, that maybe we should see if we could get those letters of support and other things. I would probably move to table this until we get more information.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second to table this until we get the support letters and further information on to ensure that there's no negative impact to the ESPA. Make sure that we.
Wood River, yeah.
Wood River.
Madam Chair, this is Dean. I have one question for Hattie. So I'm a little familiar with that area. So if you take your water out on the top end, I mean, on a normally dry year, so is the Wood River channel between the dam and where you take the water out and carry going to be dry all summer?
Madam Chair, Board Member Stevenson, the river is currently intermittent. So this is the Little Wood River.
Right.
And it is currently dry and intermittent. Dave?
That's correct. It's dry every year. We dry up the Little Wood River channel and run it through our east and west canal systems.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. There's a motion to table this project until we get further information, and it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion, or are we ready to vote? Okay, hearing no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Thank you. Thank you for making the trip. Thank you for the presentation and materials. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Raft River Loan Regional Water Sustainability Project Program proposal.
I can start out with just an introduction and kind of a recap of the project, and then I will also turn it over to Hattie, who's had a busy day. So just a little background. A proposal from the Raft River Recharge Group was received in December of 22, asking to be added to the regional sustainability funding list. At that time, the project was approved and added to the list with $7 million in funding committed, pending terms and conditions, or pending approval of terms and conditions by you all. At this time, Hattie's back with some project updates, and I'll kind of go over some highlights, turn it over to her, and then I also have a funding resolution for you guys to consider. But actually with that, I might hold off the rest. I think kind of steals Hattie's presentation. So
Pass it over to Hattie.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Hattie Zobot. I'm a project manager and engineer for the Raft River Irrigation District. Oh, thank you. Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Hattie Zobot. I'm a project manager and engineer for Ardura, working for the Raft River Irrigation District. I have been working on this project for over a decade. It's an extremely challenging project in that we need to access the Minidoka Wildlife Refuge in order to divert surface water from the Snake River to supplement groundwater usage within the Raft River. And the most important piece of this project is the environmental assessment, which provided for coordination, permitting, and access to the refuge through U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Bureau of Reclamation and NRCS as the funding partner. So last Friday, we received notice that NRCS had signed that finding of no significant impact, and the Bureau of Reclamation will adopt that environmental assessment and issue their independent FONSI. And then the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will continue to coordinate through the detailed design to provide for the permitting necessary to access the refuge, which is a very, very small piece of the project, but very, very important. Just to remind you all of this project, the Raft River Watershed Project is a NRCS program to restore and sustain agriculture. The program focuses on the watershed scale level. This project partners include the Raft River Flood District, which was the applying entity at the time, the Raft River Groundwater District, and the Raft River Recharge Group, which has since become the Raft River Irrigation District. This watershed boundary is what is defined as the boundary of the watershed for NRCS's planning purposes. One thing that was obvious in our final coordination with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is that not many are familiar on what a watershed plan is. So NRCS has used watershed plans for decades to evaluate large-scale projects. It's a combination feasibility plan, the funding planning document, and an environmental assessment in order to enable construction of very large-scale projects. I think back to the questions that have been asked to date about how do we measure and understand these impacts, planning documents generally are where we find those answers. The NRCS, however, is very good at becoming very efficient at delivering water and very rarely looks at groundwater impacts. In this case, though, every acre foot of water that is diverted from the Snake River directly provides that acre foot into the ESPA. That has been evaluated in modeling through the original feasibility study for the Raft River Recharge Group. And overall, we feel confident that there's a direct benefit to the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer in a key area in reach. Reviewing the NRCS federal funding mechanism that they're participating in, this is a very unique funding mechanism authorized by Public Law 83-566. This mechanism was developed to complete watershed scale projects. It's most typically applied in the eastern part of the country for smaller reservoirs. Some of the interesting elements of this statute are that it's limited to $25 million of construction funding and 250,000 acres of a watershed. It's obvious that when they first developed this funding mechanism, they were tailored to smaller basins in the eastern part of the country, with the Raft River's total watershed very close to 1 million acres. So that's why only a portion of the watershed is shown within this watershed plan. Just wanted to highlight Raft River as a tributary to the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer, and it's at a key location just downstream of Aberdeen Springfield Canal Company. The declining groundwater levels are a risk to sustaining agriculture within the Raft River Basin. It's a significant agricultural area with a huge economic impact to the region. It also, because the river has become intermittent, the sediment load has become very high, and the Raft River is a TMDL controlled reach with high loads into the Minidoka Wildlife Refuge and the Middle Snake. So part of this project is a water quality element. And then the recharge benefits not only the Raft River, but also the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer. These are additional excerpts from the watershed plan - environmental assessment that summarize all the different projects that were considered. The purpose of the regional water sustainability list was focused mainly on the agricultural project, which is the Raft River pipeline and pump station and recharge facilities adjacent. The bank stabilization projects and flood projects are also part of their funding goals, but they are secondary to the agricultural project. So this update was only supposed to be 10 minutes, so hopefully I'm not too far into that. Just a review of the Idaho Water Resources Board support. The group is very honored to have the $7 million awarded in project funding from the Regional Water Sustainability List. That is why they are here today, to give this update. They were also agreed to be loaned the $14.1 million to enable construction of the project. The initial budget that was submitted had phase 2 design estimated about $5.5 million. The Raft River Recharge Group has proceeded with the design work necessary to keep to the schedule. And that is probably the biggest difference from the last update to this update, is that the Raft River Recharge Group continues to invest to develop this project within the timeline that was originally submitted, which is construction by 2028. The estimated cost of the project is approximately $60 million. And that is a very large project, but those impacts are also significant. A key element to the funding through the Idaho Water Resources Board is that the Raft River Recharge Group form an irrigation district to secure the funding. Initially, the district was formed for 3,000 acres. That was based due to statutory limitations of the irrigation district code. The Idaho Water Resources Board requested that that district be expanded to match the impacts of the project. The total capacity of the pipeline is planned to be 100 CFS, and the 11,500 acres that were defined by the annexation and exclusion more closely resemble the direct impacts of the project and scale. The 7 districts are still within the district, and this map to the right shows the new 11,500 acres that are included. The anticipated loan expenses are similar, and this also applies for the grant expenses. Currently, the Raft River Irrigation District is in the design phase and permitting phase. So that should be completed this year, with anticipated bidding for construction later this fall. And the reason why they need to spend money at this point is because the lead time for some of the electrical equipment is 18 months. And so the Raft River Irrigation District anticipates expending money on materials for the electrical equipment in particular. The timeline from the last update hasn't changed, except for the design is now overlapping the permitting more closely. The Raft River Watershed Plan - Environmental Assessment took 5 years. Originally, it was anticipated to take 18 months. I wanted to discuss why those delays happened. The project is not particularly interesting and has no controversial impacts. A lot of this had to relate to the National Watershed Management Center's change in priorities. So as we know, federal programs are very political and are funded at different levels based on the administration's priorities. So in previous administrations, the Watershed Flood Prevention Operations Program was hyper-funded and other NRCS programs were less funded. Those funding levels have flip-flopped. And during that process of changing priorities, the goalpost changed for the for the Raft River Watershed Plan. So it was developed, presented, and evaluated based on what they thought the rules were, and then those rules changed, which took quite a bit of time to revise. So the preliminary design level within the watershed plan is only 30%, and those design elements have not changed, but the way that they present them within the plan and were evaluated within the plan, those standards changed. So the plan had to be rewritten in the process, and it took approximately twice as long to get through the process as a result. The end outcome of a finding of no significant impact was clear, and the agencies involved all recognize that. A key element of the discussion was related to the water availability, which we were able to discuss with federal entities that the state of Idaho is responsible for water allocation, and that water would only be appropriated legally and as authorized under agreements or recharge permitting through the Raft River Recharge Group's permit. So that was a key element, and we're thankful that the state of Idaho does such a great job appropriating water that we were able to demonstrate the water was available. I was very excited to be able to let you guys know that the environmental assessment and the FONSI from the NRCS was signed last Friday. They do have to have it publicly released through a formal process. So I was not able to get the signed FONSI for this presentation, but I believe they are waiting for adoption by Bureau of Rec in order to release that. And then the public hearing, was in July of 2025. And then, as I noted, the FONSI was just signed March 6th. So we are still on track for our schedule, which is just amazing, given all the delays from the environmental process. And we are now in the refined preliminary design. We could not pursue final design while the environmental assessment was in process due to NEPA restrictions. And we anticipate that the permitting process will be completed during the next 6 to 9 months. So construction would start in 2027. The support request today from the Idaho Water Resources Board, we were asked to provide an update. So the request is that the board agree to the security provided by the Raft River Irrigation District and authorize and release funds for the grant and loan. So that would be the $7 million in grant and the $14.1 million in loan funds. The design is in progress and has been since last fall, and that we ask for additional support for contingency funding applications. So the original program that the Raft River was selected in, the Watershed Flood Prevention Operations Program, has variable funding between administrations, and the Idaho NRCS staff has recommended the project for funding through the RCPP program, which is something that we're all familiar with, and NRCS has implemented many large-scale projects in the state of Idaho through that program. So we would have 2 funding applications for $25 million to improve the timeline of that funding being awarded. The Watershed Flood Prevention Operations Program may take multiple years to get that contracted and secured, whereas the RCPP has a more defined timeline. Even if those federal applications do not come through, just with the Water Resources Board support and the loan and the entities in the irrigation district's private support, they will build the project in phases as money is available. So the goal is to complete the whole project, but the initial part of 2028 would be deliver recharge water into the basin and supplemental irrigation for those users at the north end of the basin. The majority of the cost in the project is associated with the pipe. So the pump station and the initial length of pipe could be phased in order to get the project underway with those benefits. So with that, I'd like to introduce Bill Millenkamp, who's the chairman of the Raft River Irrigation District, and he's here to support the project. And I thought it would be good for him to talk about how they hope to implement this project ASAP.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee. My name is Bill Millenkamp. I'm a farmer, dairy farmer in the Raft River area, member of the Raft River Irrigation District, chairman of the Raft River Recharge Group. It's been 12 years, like Hattie said. 12 years to get an EA. I didn't know those things were that hard to catch, but we caught it, it sounds like. 12 years, I think, of blood, sweat, tears, and some money. You know, a lot of the farmers put a lot of money out. All of the blood, sweat, and tears came from Hattie. It takes a lot of perseverance to stay in a project this long. You guys might be used to it. It was quite the handful. So we're glad to have the EA. It's a great project for the Raft River and our community. You know, family farms down there. It's still going to be a lifeline to the Raft River. So we're glad that you've given us your support, and we appreciate it. I want to thank you for that. I guess if you had questions, you can fire away. But on the construction part of it, myself personally, I'll be the one managing a lot of the construction. I'm very savvy, and I've done a lot of big construction projects. Money that we get from the feds or the state, we'll be extremely frugal with it. I will stretch that dollar probably more so than most people. I've done a lot of my own due diligence. You know, Hattie's done a lot of the design work so far. I do a lot of maybe behind the scenes work also. But you can be assured that the money's going to be in good hands if we get the opportunity to start spending it. Do you have any questions?
So what is the status of the legislation to, you expanded the groundwater or the irrigation district, but the board members live outside of the irrigation district?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the board members were qualified based on the original 3,000 acres, and then they expanded the district, and so now they're required to live within the district. However, Matt Darrington is on the call and he can address those questions. And primarily that is an issue if members within the district protest other members' board representation of those farms, and we do not believe that will be an issue. However, the Raft River Irrigation District requested the Idaho Water Users Association support legislation to modify the statutes to resolve this issue because it affects not only the Raft River Irrigation District, but many districts. Matt, do you have anything to add?
Yes, sure. Madam Chairman, my name is Matt Darrington. I'm legal counsel for the Raft River Irrigation District, and I'm happy to give an update on that. We're grateful for the support of the Idaho Water Users Association. They are in the process of running legislation that Cole-Hansen, who's the Senate Majority Leader pro tem, is going to run on our behalf, which would amend that statute to allow for an exception for board members to live either within the county or within an adjoining county for irrigation districts with 15,000 acres or less. And so as this is supported by the Idaho Water Users Association and by our local delegation, all indications seem to say that this should pass this session. I expect to go and testify on the bill in the next week or so. And then once it passes this session, then that law would come into effect, I imagine, July 1. And so we believe, and we have reason to believe, that this won't be a problem for us any longer here right away.
Madam Chairman, Madam Chairman, this is Jeff. Is there an expectation that they would want any of these funds released prior to July 1st when that anticipated change in the law would take place?
Madam Chair, Chairman Raybould, yes, the design is underway and the irrigation district would like to pay their bills for design work to date. And that work started last year in September. So that is the primary money use of funds to date.
Okay, follow up, Madam Chairman. So if this legislation doesn't pass, then we just assume that nobody's going to protest the makeup of the board, or what happens if somebody does protest the makeup of the board? Then what happens to that irrigation district? Does anybody know?
Madam Chair, I have deferred to Matt Darrington and I'll add comments if I don't think he answers it correctly.
She's good at that. That's a good question, Jeff. Luckily, we don't have any reason to believe the legislation will fail, number one, but you're smart in considering what would happen if it does not pass. The first thing I would do is I would tell my board members that they need to figure out their residences. If it's that important to them, then we need to figure out their residences. So that'd be the first word of advice that I would have for them. Second would be that if there is a protest, we would deal with the protest, and the protest could be on a number of different bases. So I don't know that I can speculate as to what it might be, but if it's based on residence, then that would be a problem for us. And so that's something that we'd have to address as it comes along.
All right, have you gone through the process to incur the debt? I think it requires a vote of all of the shareholders.
Yes, we've completed that. We've had judicial confirmation. We've had a vote of the board and of the members. So that's all been completed.
Follow up to that, Madam Chairman, was that vote of the 3,000 acres or the 11,000 acres?
That was the full amount on the 11.5.
You have a vote of support to incur indebtedness.
Correct.
Okay.
Madam Chair, this is Al Barker. Matt, can you just go in a little more detail about the judicial confirmation? I think that might give us some comfort.
Glad to. Thanks, Al. So yes, we do have a judgment on behalf of the irrigation district to incur debt and repayment to the Idaho Water Board in the sum of $14,111,000, plus any incurred interest, expenses, and costs associated with that. And so that's the dollar amount that we are authorized on our judicial confirmation. And that judgment, Al, was entered on July 31st of 24.
And to follow up on Jeff's question, was that based upon the court being aware of 3,000 or 11,000 acres?
Ew. I'm going to have to come back to you on that, Al. I don't recall at the time if we had submitted that based upon the 3,000 acres or on the 11,500 acres. But in any event, the judgment does authorize the full amount of the loan, which is the $14,111.
And the judgment's binding on the district, correct?
It is, correct.
Another follow-up, and I'm sorry, Madam Chairman, we're getting out in the weeds here. What you've annexed these additional acres into the district, so you're at 11.5 now. Has there been any protest or any request to not have acres annexed into the district?
There has not been. We did exclude some lands back out of the district, really just as a matter of convenience for squaring up our own boundaries. But those were with existing members of the district already. We've not had any protests, and we've not had anybody approach us for new annexations either.
Okay, so all of the acres that will receive benefits from this project are currently in the irrigation district?
Hattie, I'm going to defer to you.
Madam Chair, Chairman Raybould, yes, that is correct. Those acres in the irrigation district will directly benefit based on the 100 CFS. And then I just want to remind the Finance Committee that every acre foot of water brought into the Raft River directly benefits the ESPA based on the modeling to date.
Okay, any other questions? We've certainly put in a significant amount of work in the last 12 years. And I've heard about it since I joined the board in 2018, so I appreciate the update. Is there a motion to consider? As a draft resolution?
Yes.
Yes, let's look at the draft resolution.
All right. Let's see. Starting with line 18, the project would construct a pipeline from the Snake River into the Raft River Basin to deliver private water rights, develop flood detention and recharge ponds, and pipe surface water delivery infrastructure to reduce the basin's groundwater usage. And then jumping to line 22, the Raft River Recharge Group will provide documentation of the formation of the irrigation district. And Mr. Darrington actually sent those this morning. And then I'll also keep an eye out for July when that legislation passes. But there is a gap that I wanted to talk to on line 26 here. I will fill that in with the $57,884,000 from Hattie's presentation this morning. But then I'll jump down to the terms and conditions that we had proposed for this regional sustainability contract in attachment A. Largely, these are all going to be reporting terms and conditions. Starting at the top, this will be an invoice reimbursement not to exceed contract. So invoices need to be received prior to payments being issued. There will be a 10% holdback on funds until the project is complete. When requested, the group will provide you all a monthly progress report. And these are what we propose the report contain. And then at the end of the project, a final invoice with a financial summary. And a lot of these terms and conditions are consistent with other regional sustainability contracts that you've done in the past. But with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions or changes. With their loan, that was pending the approval of acceptable security to the board. And with that expansion of the 11,500, if that works for the committee, then we can also get started on that loan contract as well.
And the loan repayment on the 11,000 acres is doable. Okay. Board Finance Committee members, are there any questions on the resolution?
Madam Chair, this is Jeff. I would move to recommend this resolution to the full board for consideration, subject to our attorney and/or attorneys reviewing where we're at with this irrigation district expansion project and giving us some kind of an idea if we have exposure in approving the disbursement of funds prior to that change in the district board member residency getting fixed by the legislature. I think we should have somebody look at that carefully and tell us whether we have exposure or not. But based on that caveat, I would recommend that this go to the full board.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to bring this to the full board with the caveat of having legal review of the terms of the timing of the legislation. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Board.
Sure, thank you.
All right, now we're down to the Minidoka Irrigation District Surface Water Coalition Operations Efficiency Project proposal.
I think Justin will lead off on this one again.
Get started. Fire up my screen real quick. All right. Back in November, you all received an application from the Minidoka Irrigation District to the Surface Water Efficiencies Program.
Surface Water Coalition.
Surface Water Efficiencies. The project requests funding support for their South Side project, and that would include repairing their existing F-waste siphon structure, improving and automating 3 of their check structures, and then piping some sections of their existing laterals expanding off of the main canal. Jumping down to the bulk of the project, and there's a map on the following page. So the project is split largely into those 3 components that we talked about in the map, and I'll scroll down there in just one second. The 3 check structures are along their main canal, labeled SSM 1, 2, and 3, here in yellow. And then just down here at the bottom of the page would be the F-waste siphon structure. The proposal there would be to rebuild this existing siphon about 10 feet downstream so that they could knock out the existing one. And then the last component of this project is piping all of these laterals off of that main stem in lighter blue, labeled 310-3, 311, 312 in those areas. Minidoka proposes that the project would be phased across 3 years. Construction would take place during periods between the irrigation seasons so as not to disrupt regular irrigation operations, generally somewhere between October and wrapped up by March of each year. In their application, Minidoka was able to reduce its seepage and operational loss by piping these open laterals and automating these check structures. The district will be able to prevent unnecessary diversions and minimize conveyance losses also through that automation. Additionally, they'll be able to better and more efficiently run its delivery systems without having man-hours to get out to each of those delivery systems by installing the real-time telemetry equipment. And they'll be better able to coordinate operations. And I can pause there for any questions on the project. After that is staff's review.
Does anybody have any questions on the project as it is, as it's been presented? I think we're ready for staff's review.
So in reviewing the proposal, we had we had requested the department's hydrology section to evaluate seepage losses and return flow impacts based on this project. And we have Jennifer Suko here if we have any questions. She was our expert on the ESPAM. But kind of a summation of the impacts that we saw. The project would recharge the aquifer by about 1,345 acre feet through the piping of those laterals and rebuilding of the F waste. But additionally, through ESPAM 2.2, there was a reduction of 1,345 acre feet in long-term Snake River stream flow. And we have that split out by reach. But based on the offsetting totals, it seems that recharge done in the area could move water between surface and groundwater, but one may come at the expense of the other. The other thing that we wanted to highlight here was that the proposed project would reduce surface water return flows, and it was estimated between 5,000 and 7,000 acre feet a year at the F-way structure and other spill locations. And those were kind of some of the big impacts that we saw. There may be questions with the return flow credit storage, but we need to do some more research there before we get into it. But with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions. And then we have Jennifer Suko here if you have any questions on her analysis. We also have Shauna Adams, Dan Davidson, and I want to say Mr. Don Terry from Burley Irrigation District on to answer any questions.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that this would be a net zero impact to the ESPA.
I think I'll let Jennifer answer that question.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe just go over that again. So there's two components to this project. The smaller volume component is the lining of the laterals and reduction in operational spills from the laterals. Based on the quantities they had provided as estimates of saved seepage losses in their proposal, I estimated they would reduce recharge to the ESPA by about 1,345 acre feet per year. And that would be realized at different reaches, about 690 acre feet per year. That would be in the near Blackfoot to Minidoka reach, which is the surface water or the supply for the Surface Water Coalition members. The proposed project would result in a long-term cumulative reduction in ESPA storage of over 24,000 acre feet. The other larger component of the project is the reduction in return flow at the F waste. So that's just direct surface return to the Snake River, but it does return to the reach that is the supply for, Twin Falls Canal Company. So that would, even though it doesn't affect the aquifer, it would reduce their supply. And whatever operational spills they reduce from those other laterals. And that's where I don't know how much operational spill they'd be reducing at those other laterals. We have measurements on the F waste, so that's where that range of 5,000 to 7,000, acre feet per year comes in. Now, they mention in the proposal that they would intend to implement, providing more storage water for soft conversions. Similar to the conversation I heard online with some of the previous projects is that you talked about today, is that there's no commitment to that. There's no specifics about where and when that would occur. So we can't model whatever offsetting benefit there would be. So some of these reductions might be offset, but we don't know that, we can't quantify that from the proposal, and there's no firm commitment on how and when that would occur. Also, conversions in the Magic Valley area, the benefit of those would be split between the near Blackfoot to Minidoka reach and the Kimberly to King Hill reach. You could say roughly half and half, whereas the reduction of return fill from the F waste would be, specifically to the near Blackfoot to Minidoka reach. So.
Okay, is there a project proponent that wants to talk about this project? Would that be Dan Davidson?
He's got his hand up.
Okay, yes, go ahead, Dan.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. My name's Dan Davidson. I'm the manager for Minidoka Irrigation District. And I suppose the best way to do this is for me to start out talking a little bit about the history of the project. Turn it over to Don Terry. He can talk more specifically about the F waste, and then we could turn it over to Shauna to kind of back clean up on this. MID came along to the irrigation party fairly late in priority. We have mostly junior natural flow rights. Because of that, we started out with some pretty serious senior storage rights. We have water in Walcott, American Falls, Palisades, and Jackson. Our Walcott water right typically fills in October, and our Jackson right typically fills December of each water year. MID delivers water to about 70,000 acres on the north side of the river, and we share BID's gravity canal. We irrigate roughly 7,000 acres off of the gravity canal on the south side of the river. Changes in technology is part of what's driving this grant. Historically, BID made their changes at the river, and then as they would move back down their canal, they would make changes at each one of the check structures to ferry the water through to their pump stations. They make their changes sometimes 2 a.m., 4 a.m., and 6 a.m. so that they can get it to their specific pump stations for deliveries. Nowadays, that diversion is done by computer, and so nobody is driving up the canal at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., and 6 a.m. to make the changes on the check structures. So the technology side of this is we would automate the level of the canals at each one of these check structures to level it out. Where this becomes real important for Minidoka Irrigation District is if they're bringing water in, the water level is abnormally high along there, and we end up spilling water back to the river. And if they're taking water out, that water level is low in the main canal until somebody gets up there to make those changes. The next part of the grant is piping the laterals to increase efficiency. That helps Minidoka Irrigation District to save as much storage water as possible. With the settlement agreement with the groundwater users, typically BID and MID do have some injury, but it's never been significant enough that we were mitigated for those injuries. Lost my place here, I apologize. So typically in an irrigation season, Minidoka Irrigation District's carryover water is in Jackson. We have the 1906 priority in Jackson's, and like I say, it fills generally in December of each year. Twin Falls and Northside Canal Company, they have the upper part of Jackson. So by saving this storage water in MID's account, it allows Twin Falls and Northside canals to fill their Jackson priorities faster. Other things that are going on with Minidoka Irrigation District, we are currently in our final year of fixing the Going Sump Recharge project. It's a board recharge grant. We're hoping to wrap that up by the end of this year, and I believe we will come in under budget. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, or we can turn it over to Dawn to talk about the F waste.
Do we have any questions for Dan at this time, Finance Committee members or other board members? I'm not seeing any, so why don't we go ahead and talk about the F-waste?
Hey, my name's Don Terry. I'm the manager of Burley Irrigation District. Thanks for having me. I appreciate our partnership with MID and for Shauna that is carrying most of the water for this grant process. I appreciate that. Dan did a good job of explaining our water right and where our water comes from. The only difference is we have water in Lake Walcott, and the majority of our water is in American Falls. The F-waste is important to us because it's not a place that was designed to spill water. It was an emergency discharge of water when our pump station goes offline. We can pull almost 1,200 CFS into our first lift pump station. And when all it takes is a lightning strike to knock us offline, it's pretty impressive. I wish everybody could see this wave that backs up our gravity canal when this happens. And that structure is uniquely constructed to where it siphons the water out of the gravity canal and sends it down the channel and dumps back into the river. Out of the water that we spill there, this will not completely stop the water we spill there. There's going to be some operational spill there always. If we could, so one thing that would help us in the efficiency range of things is when we're at full pool, which is all but spilling over the weir blade, our pumps are way more efficient. We're talking 10 to 15 CFS more water that we can pump, and our amp load also goes down at that point. So if we could fix our F-waste and have the weir blade adjustable where we could capture that water, we could be more efficient and save a lot of money. Our pumping cost is just south of $1 million. So anything we can save in that realm is a big help to BID. We do have Steven Anderson. He's our engineer working on this project. If you want to question him about the condition of the F-waste, it's in bad shape. He can testify to that. We do have a 1/3 grant, aging infrastructure grant in place already for this project. But I appreciate you guys looking at this project and hopefully funding it. Thanks.
All right, thank you for that. Is there any other questions for Don from the Finance Committee members or other board members?
Madam Chair, this is Dean Stevenson. I'd just like to make a comment. I'd like to thank, both Dan and Don for coming and speaking to us today, but also, I've been out to the F-waste, and I think the only thing that's holding that in place is the sheer volume of the cement that's holding it there. And that, that's, if that one washes out, then they've lost their canal there. So I think even though they talk about some return flows to the river, I think the F-waste almost becomes a safety issue at this point.
Madam Chair, this is Jeff. There was some discussion earlier, or at least a comment made about the return flow credit that's part of the Water District 01 accounting. Is Water District 01 weighed in on how this would impact that and impact those downriver that receive the spill from the F-waste?
Is that a question for
Anybody? Yeah. I
Dan,
don't
do you
know
want to?
if Dan or whoever's would know.
Madam Chair, Jeff, the return flow credit is an agreed upon set amount each year for Minidoka Irrigation District. I believe it's $8,000 500 some odd acre feet. That's kind of open. I don't think it would change that, but we could definitely consider that.
Okay, I just wondered if there was an impact there that we needed to consider, but
Madam Chair, Jeff, so historically, Minidoka Irrigation District loses far more water out of our drain system on the north side of the river than we lose out of the F waste and on the south side. That's where the majority of our return flow credit comes from is from the drains on the north side. This does not change that.
okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, Brian
Yes.
here.
Good.
I don't know if were you ready for non-committee members or?
Yes, I'm ready for non-committee members. Anybody who wants to
so-
talk about this.
So question for Dan, and I don't know if you listened earlier, Dan, but I have to look through the same lens as I did on the Aberdeen project, and I misspoke a little bit there. I mentioned that those reach gains are largely come into the Twin Falls Canal natural flow in the summer, but there is a lot of times when those reach gains do benefit Minidoka and BID and AFRD2 also. So just correcting myself, but for me to support this, I mean, I think the automation is great. I think you got to have that check structure automated and not have, the risk of flooding and the things that come with that and efficiency. But as far as the lining those laterals, I need to see a way that it has no net change to that reach gain. And here again, we always say the Blackfoot to Minidoka reach gain. Well, it's really the Blackfoot to Milner reach gain, and that's because this would affect mainly between the Minidoka gauge and the Milner, but it just looks to me like this would be quite a bit of a negative to that reach gain. So it'd be a benefit to storage to save that water, but it would be a detriment to natural flow, particularly in the late summer when it would be saving quite a bit of water. So same issue for me. If we'd have to see, what are the concrete methods that are going to make sure that we aren't further reducing reach gains, and by so doing, we'd also increase the mitigation requirements for the pumping community. So.
Madam Chair, Brian, Minidoka Irrigation District completed title transfer in 2021, and since then we've actively pursued soft conversions with Magic Valley Groundwater District. To date, we've converted a little over 1,000 acres from groundwater to surface water. We're also, like I mentioned before, we've got the recharge at Going Sump, which hopefully will take 100 to 150 CFS. On the south side, Gravity Canal, you've got Southwest Irrigation District and Magic Valley Groundwater District. They've both put in soft conversion projects on the Gravity Canal to help alleviate some of the pumping from groundwater. So all the way around, the savings that both BID and MID see are helping to offset the losses that would come from piping these laterals.
And just to follow up, Madam Chair and Dan, and I totally understand that. I mean, I know MID does a lot to help with the aquifer and the groundwater issues. The problem on this project to me is it's most of the losses to the reach gain are going to be from the shallow aquifer, and most of the reach, I assume Going Sump and those type projects, soft conversions, mainly the benefits go to the more regional aquifer. So it just becomes that same problem for Twin Falls. It's a reduction in natural flow at a critical time that the aquifer can't really solve. But I've said enough. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Brian, I appreciate Brian's questions. I really do. One of the issues that we're looking at in this shallow aquifer area is souring crops. We're trying to get that water level down in some of these areas so that we can grow a good crop here. But I appreciate Brian's concern, though. Thank you.
All right. Are you willing to break this project up into two pieces, the F-waste and then the piping and the automation?
Minute Oak Irrigation District is happy to do that, Madam Chair. I guess need to ask Dawn same thing, and then Shauna has her hand up also.
All
Chairman.
right, let's first hear.
Sorry.
Let's first hear from Shauna.
Okay, we'll wait for Shauna.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair Cole-Hansen. To address the possibility of splitting the project into two different projects, essentially having the automation and the F-waste really do need to stay together because those directly impact one another. The piping could theoretically be moved to a different project and it could be potentially submitted for funding under a different program. Our goal here is not to eliminate the recharge and it's not to eliminate the natural flows. Our goal is to eliminate the uncontrolled losses that we're experiencing in the area. I do have a whole other spiel, but that was just to answer that one question.
Okay.
Madam Chairman. I would
Yes,
also
go.
agree that it would be okay to break this into two pieces. At Burley Irrigation, we just like to get rid of the massive fluctuation down the F-waste or down the gravity canal so we can control it at the F-waste. Thanks.
Okay. I do see the wisdom of combining the automation with the F-waste. Yes. Is there any other thoughts by Finance Committee members or other board members? Dean?
No, I just think that, the discussion of separating those two, I think that's a pretty good idea there. I'd be supportive
Would
of
you
that.
like to make a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would vote that we move this forward with a recommendation to the Finance Committee that we separate these two pieces of the project.
This is Jeff. Just to clarify, a recommendation of the full board that we consider this is two separate projects.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, separate to the full board.
I'd second that.
Is there a recommendation on which project to fund attached to your motion?
Madam Chair, I think we were talking about automation and the F-waste as the portion that we would like to segregate out and consider at this time and hold up on the lining or piping portion of the proposal until we have more information. Is that correct, Dean?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So is there a second on that motion?
I second it, I think, yeah.
Okay. It's been
Dean and
moved
I
and
are kind of
seconded.
co-motioning and seconding, but that's what we've got.
Yes. So we would like to move forward with the motion is to move forward with the F-waste and automation as a recommended funded project to the full board. And consider and leave the other projects separate based until we can get some further information.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
just so staff's clear here, this was originally proposed for the efficiency program. So does the board want to move forward with the one project under the efficiency program? Or are we looking at aging infrastructure grant?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, Madam Chairman, this is Jeff. I thought somebody said, and maybe I'm behind a project, that they had received some aging infrastructure funding. Has there been aging infrastructure awarded for the F-waste?
Yes, there has been. There was an award to the Burley Irrigation District for a 1/3 cost share of the F-waste structure.
Okay, follow up, Madam Chairman. Does Burley Irrigation own and operate the F-waste, or is there mutual ownership between MID and BID?
Burley Irrigation owns and operates the F-waste.
Okay.
Madam
the,
Chair, Jeff,
Yes, go ahead, Dan.
Minidoka Irrigation District just gets to pay for about 10% of it.
Okay.
And you're honored to do that, right?
Every year we make we get together and we smile and we trade checks.
And we appreciate it, Dan. Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Gibbs, I saw your box light up a couple times. Do you have any comments?
No, I was just getting ready to vote. That's all. I am awake.
Madam Chairman, is there, it seems to me like there is some efficiency component to a revamped F-waste. Did I not hear that? In addition to the aging infrastructure portion of the project?
Dan is shaking his head yes, and I believe that would be the efficiency portion of it, the automation.
Yes, that's correct,
Madam Chair, Mr. Raybould.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I thought that there was going to be a moment of openness.
That's okay. I seen your hand up too, but we kind of talk over each other here. So go ahead.
Just as a quick introduction, my name is Shauna Adams, and I'm the project manager for Minidoka Irrigation District. I'm also the author of this proposal that was submitted. A good portion of the water loss that we are looking to conserve and save is coming from the F-waste. That would make it a water efficiency project. However, it is also an aging infrastructure project. It's both in the same. And that's why it was submitted the way that it was, is not as an aging infrastructure project, especially because there has been a proposal submitted and funded from the Water Resource Board for Burley Irrigation District under the Aging Infrastructure Program. Portions of the system that include the F-waste date back to the early 1900s, as many of us are aware, and they're now well beyond their intended service life. So addressing those issues is a twofold benefit to the system. It allows us to work towards alleviating the safety concern that we would face if we were to lose the F-waste. And I say we, as though I'm speaking for Minidoka and Burley Irrigation Districts. And this, I am a little bit, but I don't want to overstep there. It would be a major safety issue if we were to lose that structure. And as Mr. Stevenson addressed earlier, we're pretty sure the only thing holding the F-waste in place at this point is the sheer mass of the concrete in place. So I'm open to having this funded through whatever program could fund it or could handle it. However, I wanted to share that it was submitted under this one because it met this one a little bit better than the aging infrastructure. I think it's also super important to emphasize that MID and Burley Irrigation District have a long history of cooperation with groundwater management entities, such as Magic Valley Groundwater and Southwest Irrigation. We've actively worked together on recharge efforts in these locations that are hydrologically beneficial to the aquifer system and to our groundwater users. Additionally, MID currently has partnered with 10 different water users. I know Dan mentioned some acres earlier, but through those partnerships, we've been able to deliver last year alone in 2025, over 2,700 acre feet to these soft conversions. Those are specific impacts where the water conservation directly impacts the health of the aquifer. I do really quick, and this will be the last one, last thing I want to say, is I really want to reemphasize that our goal is not to eliminate the natural flows or the recharge. We just want to eliminate the uncontrolled losses and deliver it to a place that's more beneficial.
Madam Chairman, this is Jeff. As I hear all this, I'm wondering if it's premature to make a recommendation to the full board today. We do have another finance committee meeting scheduled, I believe, on March 26th. Could we ask staff, and I know they're going to love this, could they evaluate this and come back to us at our subsequent finance committee meeting with a recommendation of how the mix between aging infrastructure funding and potential efficiency funding could be coupled to rehabilitate the F-waste and the other work that's contained in this proposal?
And to probably look at the aging infrastructure grant to see if anything, I'm assuming no draws have been taken against that grant. And would be, okay. So get rid of that one and redo this one if that's the, or if board's approved.
How bad did Mr. Patton cringe when I made that suggestion?
No, we can, Madam Chair, Jeff, we can make that work.
I wonder if we had more information, if we couldn't make a more informed decision to recommend and what to recommend at the next meeting.
Yes, this is a little messy. But okay, Dean, are you willing to withdraw your motion?
Yes, I am. I got to figure out how to get my iPad to work here. Yes, I am. Madam
Yeah,
Chair.
and I would withdraw my second, and I think based on the discussion we just had, that probably gives staff an action item unless staff wants a motion.
Does staff need a motion?
No, we can take this direction.
Okay. Board
Madam
Member
Chair.
Barker, do you? Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask Dan if, I mean, I heard what you said about the Minidoka credit. It would be really useful for us to know that you've talked with the Twin Falls Northside folks about that to make sure that they don't have any issues. And I'm not saying that they do, but I'm just saying it'd be helpful for us to know that they don't.
Madam Chair, Al, we're happy to do that.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Madam Chair
Okay.
and members of the Finance Committee. One quick note as we look at potentially doing away with the aging infrastructure grant that BID has already been awarded. I do think it is important to note that in the budget that was submitted with this proposal, that budget included holding off money or reducing the budget for accounting for that grant being funded still. So if we were to look at rewriting that proposal or that grant for Burley Irrigation District, that would need to tie that money back into this proposal as well. If at all possible.
Okay, yes. Yes, we just don't want to use two grants for the same project.
And they were split budget wise, and I did make a note in my proposal that this project had received a certain amount of funding from the aging infrastructure, and this proposal specifically addressed items that were not part of the same. It wasn't double dipping the funding.
I think staff will get with you on that and clear that up for us board members to easily understand and digest. But thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to move on from that one. I think we know where we're going. So the next item on the agenda is Farmers Land and Irrigation Company loan. Do we need to take a break?
I'm hoping this one is relatively short.
Okay.
5 minutes, maybe.
Okay.
Right, last one. You all received an application from the Farmers Land and Irrigation Company requesting a loan for $40,000. They are proposing to install some skating equipment at their existing Soda Creek diversion. They received a loan from you about a year ago, last summer, for $185,333 for work at that Soda Creek diversion works. This would increase the scope and roll that into a new single contract loan for $225,333. Along with that 185. They also received a aging infrastructure grant. And I want to say they had first received it in round 3 or 4, but they've most recently applied in round 6 and were awarded to replace the earlier rounds. And that's the 50% cost share for the 185,333. So the proposal with this loan would be to increase that contract to 225,333 on a 15-year term at a 4.88% interest rate. Effectively, what this would do in combining and increasing the project is drop their annual payment by about $1,000. With that, we do have security for the existing loan. We've got some water rights, things like that. We can leave those in place for this new contract. And actually with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions for Justin on this loan? Is there a proponent for the project online?
Yeah. Looks like Wade.
Yes,
Okay. Would you like to talk about the project?
sure, Madam Chairman and committee members there. I'm Wade Olorenshaw. I've been on the system for about 35 years and watched it yo-yo up and down on the ends in quite an inconsistent manner. And I'm in favor of this proposal in that it'll automate and give us the ability to make those adjustments morning and night to help even out the water deliveries on the ends of the canal system. And we're in favor of this automation for this project. Thank you.
Okay. Finance Committee members, any comments about this loan?
Madam Chairman, this is Mark. I would like to move recommend this loan to the full board.
Okay, is there a second?
It's Jeff. I'll second it.
Do we have the draft resolution in front of us? Before we vote, should we go through the now therefores?
Absolutely. So jumping to line 30, the IWRB approves a loan not to exceed $40,000 from the revolving development account at 4.88% interest with a 15-year term. And then subsequently in line 33, the existing loan, IWRB contract 1046 from the water management, will be combined with this approval into a single contract not to exceed 225,333 from the revolving development at a 4.88% interest rate for a 15-year term. And after following that is our standard loan conditions of security.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, so go before the full board. Thursday. All right, any other items?
Not from staff. Mr.
Not from staff?
Sure.
No. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
And is there a second?
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved and second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 We're adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.